In December 2025, Kim Jong-un did something North Korean leaders rarely do. He went public about what he meant to do next. State outlet KCNA reported that Kim had personally toured munitions plants over the last quarter of the year, walking production lines, sizing up installed capacity, and signing off on modernization plans to be locked in at the 2026 Party Congress. The order was unusually direct and specific for a regime that usually wraps its arms programs in carefully vague talk about defensive capability and strategic deterrence. Scale up missile production, build new plants, and meet the armed forces' rising needs at a level that would make North Korea self-sufficient in weapon systems for any kind of drawn-out fight. Regimes that keep their programs buried in foggy, ambiguous language don't typically spell out industrial targets for the world to read unless they want the world to know they're speeding up. And they want the world wondering why. To make sense of Kim's logic in 2026, you've got to throw out the easy story a lot of Western takes sell, that North Korea's piling up arsenals because Kim's an irrational dictator running on paranoia and megalomania who only speaks the language of force, and replace it with the question, serious geopolitical. Analysts ask about any state actor when behavior looks inexplicable at first glance. What's that actor trying to achieve? What constraints and openings do they see in the environment right now? And why is this specific strategy what they believe will get them there? Ask that about Kim Jong-un in 2026 and you get at least 4 layers that overlap, reinforce each other, and together explain not just the missile buildup, but the whole arc of North Korean foreign policy over the last 5 years. The first layer is the most immediate, the most bluntly economic, and the one Western news least likes to touch because it means admitting North Korea's getting something real in return for backing Russia. Russia's paying, and it's paying well. North Korea's involvement in the war in Ukraine, which started with 152 limited artillery ammo in volumes Toy SS analysts estimated at over 1 million rounds across 2024, stepped up to short-range ballistic missiles used against Ukrainian infrastructure, and ended up with tens of thousands of North Korean troops embedded in Russian units in the Kursk region, opened for Pyongyang a stream of revenue and tech transfer with no real precedent in the regime's recent history. Researchers at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the International Crisis Group have mapped what North Korea's getting in exchange. Not just payment in hard currency and oil, but technology transfers in areas Pyongyang had tried to grow at home for decades without hitting the reliability bar for actual operations. Recon satellite tech, the Yongbyon, launched November 2023, was followed by improved models with much sharper imagery analysts tied to Russian technical help, submarine propulsion capability that, in some respects, edges toward more advanced conventional propulsion, and the piece that really keeps American planners up at night, long-range cruise missiles with guidance stacks that showed better accuracy in 2024-2025 tests than the previous generation of North Korean systems. For Kim, that's about as concrete a win as you'll see. For a strategy he's been building systematically since taking power in 2011. Use the missile and nuclear portfolio not just as a defensive shield, but as currency in an international market where US adversaries will pay a premium for military capacity and bulk. The nuclear program isn't only insurance against regime change, it's an industry. Kim's second layer is what strategists call a strategic window, the read that the international environment in 2025-2026 is unusually good for building capability, and that the window could slam shut fast enough that the build-up has to happen now, as fast as the North's industrial base can move. The pieces of that window are all over the map, and from Pyongyang's chair, they all point the same way. American attention is splintered across 3 crisis theaters of historic size at once: the Iran fight and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. mounting tension in the Taiwan Strait, where China's running military exercises at a scale without precedent, and the global economic fallout from both conflicts, which is eating the Trump administration's political bandwidth in a way that makes serious strategic focus on the Korean peninsula unlikely for months. Right now, Washington's eyes are on the Persian Gulf. That's room to maneuver Kim wouldn't have if US focus were locked on the Pacific. On top of that, the Iran conflict showed in real time to any analyst with access to open-source intel, something Kim had theorized before, but now has proof of: mosaic defense, the doctrine of dispersal, and constant repositioning of offensive kit that Iran used to deny the US clean, decisive precision strikes. Works. Not perfectly. Not in a way that makes the IRGC untouchable, but well enough that months into the fight, the US still hadn't knocked out the threat at the speed and completeness the opening strikes promised. Kim took notes. His military planners baked the lessons into nuclear hardening and missile production dispersal programs that have been running since 2023. More tunnels, underground plants, patterns for repositioning mobile launchers that in places mirror Iranian doctrine adapted to North Korea's mountains, which give you hidey holes flat southern Iran doesn't hand you nearly as easily. The third layer is export, and it's what turns the North Korean missile file from a regional headache into global security architecture. North Korea isn't scaling missile production just for home use. It's scaling to sell, to transfer, to build the same kind of capacity dependency the US built with allies in the Cold War through arms sales and security deals, but on the other side of the geopolitical ledger, for actors who need military kit, the Western market won't sell them. Dr. Ahn Chan-il, raised in North Korea, now heading Seoul's World Institute for North Korea, put it with the clarity of someone who gets how the regime thinks inside, with the North's ICBM program now widely seen as having reached a stage where it can reach the continental US. With enough reliability to matter operationally, development focus shifts toward medium and intermediate range systems, the exact sweet spot for export to regional players who need deterrence against nearby adversaries, not a direct slugfest with the United States. Iran bought North Korean missiles before sanctions made the deals messier. Houthi Yemen used North Korean-derived variants against Saudi targets. Once those transfer routes exist, they've got a resilient sanctions never fully killed. They just made everything pricier and slower. A North Korea turning out missiles at industrial scale, with quality lifted by Russian transfers and a distribution web decades in the making, isn't just a US regional security problem. It's a supplier of offensive capability for pretty much any actor with the will and the wallet. The fourth layer is the oldest, the deepest, and the one Western analysts most often underrate because it means taking seriously a lesson the North Korean regime drew from one specific historical episode and then used as the organizing principle for everything since. That episode is the end of Muammar Gaddafi. In 2003, Gaddafi publicly traded away Libya's nuclear program for normalization with the West, sanctions relief, diplomatic recognition, a seat back at the table. The deal held, Libya dismantled, sanctions came off. Gaddafi got the red carpet treatment in Western capitals as a reformed leader. In 2011, 8 years after the deal, NATO backed the rebels who toppled and killed Gaddafi as he tried to run from Sirte in a vehicle column hit by a French airstrike. Kim brings up that precedent all the time, in domestic policy settings according to North Korean defectors who've heard high-level conversations. The conclusion he draws is blunt, and the regimes said it out loud in official statements. Leaders who give up nuclear capability don't get security in return. They get vulnerability with an expiration date. Nuclear capability is the only guarantee the historical record says you can bank on. Not because Americans are necessarily negotiating in bad faith, but because circumstances change, administrations change, and what one White House treats as binding, the next may treat as up for grabs. The Straits Times in Singapore reported in December 2025 that Kim personally inspected construction analysts ID'd as a ballistic missile submarine, an asset that, once it's operational and reliable enough, fundamentally shifts the strategic equation because it's what planners call second strike capability, the ability to ride out a US disarming first strike and still hit back hard enough to inflict unacceptable damage. A leader with a credible second strike doesn't have to lose sleep over preventive decapitation, no Delta raids, no SEAL takedowns, no precision strikes trying to erase the arsenal before it can fly. They can sit at the table as someone the other side can't remove without guaranteed reprisal. They can reject pressure a regime without that insurance would have to swallow. For Kim, that's not some isolated dictator off in conspiracy land. It's strategic rationality applied consistently to a situation he reads with more sophistication than a lot of Western coverage gives him credit for. The 2026 missile surge is what you get when all four of these layers land at once. Russia's paying and moving tech, the strategic windows open with US attention fragmented, the export market for offensive kit is heating up with Iran's war, proving demand, and the Gaddafi lesson stays the North Star that makes any American push for disarmament not just ineffective, but counterproductive, because every fresh round of pressure inside the regime's logic only sharpens the case to keep accelerating. The core paradox US policy hasn't cracked in 30 years of trying is this. The steps Washington takes to pressure North Korea to slow the arms program are the same steps that, from Kim's vantage, prove why slowing down would be suicide. Every extra round of sanctions, every bigger US-South Korea joint exercise, every line from Washington about not tolerating an operational North Korean ICBM only reinforces the judgment that the arms program is the only reliable shield you've got. There's no clean way out of that paradox. Analysts on both sides of the American aisle, when they're honest behind closed doors, will tell you that. The question isn't whether North Korea keeps expanding missile capability. Under current conditions, it will. The question is, what happens when that expansion hits the point where retaliation capacity is robust enough to fundamentally change anyone's calculus, including China's, which shares a border with the North and, for all the surface alignment, has its own interest in Pyongyang not getting so autonomous, it moves without checking with Beijing, because North Korea with bigger arsenals, Beijing can still steer, is an ally. North Korea with bigger arsenals, Beijing can't control anymore, is something else entirely. And Kim Jong-un, who's spent his whole life in a system where survival means never being fully owned by anyone, probably grasps that distinction better than any foreign capital's spreadsheet geopolitics crew. The biggest missile expansion in North Korean history isn't irrational. It's the most coherent application you're going to see of a doctrine built on one plain premise. The world doesn't protect leaders who trust the world to protect them. Ask Gaddafi, if you still could, if you want to see how this North Korean build-up plugs straight into what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, and how Kim's using the Iran fight to advance goals the regime's chased for decades while everyone's looking the other way. That video's on screen now. Hit subscribe if you want to stay with the analysis that stitches together the stories the news covers separately, but national security planners read as chapters of the same global problem.